When the missile hit the children's hospital, Dr. Ihor Kolodka and his colleague were operating on a 4-month-old baby with a cleft palate.
We was already on the middle of the operation. We started to put sutures. So when it happened, when we was blow out from the table, and we was under the table after. First, we saved the kid, of course, and then we start working with our damages because my face was all in blood. My colleague was full back on blood, so we have to put some sutures.
Here's Dr. Kolodka on the left and his colleague, Dr. Oleg Holubchenko, on the right, covered in their own blood, having sutured each other, now trying to rescue patients and colleagues. They had to work fast to save those buried in the rubble. 2 medical staff were killed. Volunteers joined from the neighborhood. 2.5 years of war have prepared Ukrainians for this.
Our kids already say, "Oh, alarm!" So rockets are flying. So it's you don't have that kind of shock already when you hear that situation, and you try to think what you can do to help.
7 children were injured. Those who were being treated for cancer will now have to be taken elsewhere, but no other hospital in Ukraine has the same kind of specialist facilities. The Ukrainian Security Service has released pictures of the Russian Kh-101 missile they say hit the hospital. Today, as they started to clear the wreckage and NATO leaders gathered in Washington, there was time to reflect on the pressure many Ukrainians feel some NATO countries are putting them under to start peace talks with Russia.
Everyone understands that who is Vladimir Putin, who is Russia, and what they pretend to do. But everyone wants from us to speak with them. I think that they don't want peace. If they want peace, they could just take their army from our territory. Don't kill us. Don't kill our kids. And they have pretty big territory. Why they need our home?
Dr. Kolodka sees himself not as a hero, but as one member of a family bound together by tragedy and hope.
We still feel like a big family. We work hard together. We think what we can do to save our hospital, to make it work again. I think the hospital is unique, and the people who are working here are also very unique and very beautiful people.
As for the baby he was operating on, the surgery has been completed in another hospital. She's safe, at least for now.
Lindsey Hilsum reporting there. Now, Jonathan Powell was Tony Blair's chief of staff and right-hand man during the 10 years that he was Prime Minister. I spoke to him a little while about the challenges facing Sir Keir Starmer as he heads to his first NATO summit. And I began by asking how different his domestic challenges are to those that faced Tony Blair when he became Prime Minister.
Well, I think the problem is not the size of his majority. The problem is the problems left for him by the previous government. I mean, the fiscal problems, the problems with prisons, the problems in terms of how we're seen around the world. He's really surrounded by problems. We had plenty of problems inherited from John Major, but nothing like this scale. So the problem for Keir Starmer is going to be, this is going to be blood, sweat and tears. It's not sunny uplands. It's going to be trying to put this country back on its feet, trying to make things work again. It's going to be very, very difficult.
And he has tried to manage expectations, but at the same time, we're dealing with an electorate that is upset and also possibly quite restless.
Well, it's going to be a time where people project onto Keir Starmer all sorts of promises he didn't actually make. He made a very modest series of promises. We also had very modest promises in our pledge card, but people projected onto Tony Blair all sorts of hopes and expectations. And eventually you get to the stage where people start being disappointed, then start accusing you of betrayal. That is just the nature of democratic politics. But for the moment, he's made, in my view, a very good start and has demonstrated people he's serious about trying to change things. And it's about time we had a serious Prime Minister, because we haven't for a while.
So Keir Starmer's heading to Washington. There'll be the NATO summit tomorrow at a very important time for NATO, for Europe, because of the war in Ukraine. But of course also he's going to meet President Biden tomorrow, I believe, in the White House. How different is the reality that he faces in the global arena to the one that you faced in 1997?
Well, this is Keir Starmer's coming out party with the world leaders very quickly into his administration. Tony Blair had a G7 summit quite quickly. I think it was about a month afterwards in Denver. I remember we chartered Concorde to go there, which turned out to be extremely uncomfortable and, of course, couldn't fly at supersonic speed over land. And since it was Denver, it was a rather long journey. But so he was welcomed by all the other leaders as a chance to start relationships. But Keir Starmer's being thrown in right at the deep end because not only do you have the horrific attacks in Ukraine yesterday, which was what the summit's supposed to be dealing about, but everyone will be looking, in fact, at President Biden and his age and how he's reacting to things. So Keir Starmer's first meeting with the US president won't be so much about that first meeting as how the President Biden himself performs.
But you have one presidential candidate, the incumbent, who may not be the candidate and who may not be able to function if he wins. And you've got another candidate in the convicted felon Donald Trump, who we know from his first experience in power was trouble for Europe and in the Brits as well, and might be trouble again, and this time a lot worse.
Well, it is true that you've got real problems in Paris, you've got real problems with the government in Germany, and now problems in Washington too. The UK, which has so long been sort of absent really from international councils, is suddenly back and suddenly in rather an important place because it's the one place with a stable government with political capital and just starting off. So actually Keir Starmer is in quite well placed to take a leading role in all of this because everyone else has got really big problems.
But we don't have a gang anymore. We're out of the EU. That makes a difference as well, doesn't it?
We are out of the EU. That is a big problem. It's a big problem economically and it's a big problem politically. But it does give the UK a chance to be that bridge across the Atlantic that Tony Blair always used to talk about.
If it is President Donald Trump, what advice would you, if he asked you, give Keir Starmer about how to deal with him?
Well, I think David Lammy has taken a very sensible approach by trying to reach out to those around Donald Trump, J.D. Vance and others, to establish relationships in advance in case it is Trump, because UK will have to get on with the US, especially given that we're outside the EU, regardless of who's leading it.
Finally, and very briefly, I'm told by people around Donald Trump that he really likes the fact that it's Sir Keir Starmer, that he's got a knighthood.
Maybe we should give Donald Trump a knighthood, and that will do us some good.
We'll watch that space. Jonathan Powell, thanks very much.